Hello, everyone, and welcome. We will get started in just a few seconds. We're going to give folks a chance to log on and get their audio set. Hello, everyone. We are going to get started in just about 10 seconds here, just giving folks a chance to log on. All right, we will go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Indiana Youth Institute's webinar, Positive Behavior Strategies. My name is Joshua Long. I'm the Senior Educational Content Manager here at IYI. We thank you for joining us for today's webinar, and we are grateful to have the chance to connect as a community of Indiana youth workers who remain committed to meeting the needs of our youth and children. For those who are not familiar with IYI, our mission is to improve the lives of all Indiana children by strengthening and connecting the people, organizations, and communities that are focused on kids and youth. Listed here, you can see our vision that drives the work we do for Indiana youth. And before we begin, I'm going to share a few pointers that will help you engage with today's webinar. For any technical support issues, use the chat feature to send a message, and I will assist you. You can use this feature to converse with the group as well. One note, make sure the blue bubble after 2 says that you are sending to everyone if you're trying to chat and engage. For technical support issues, you can either send to everyone or to hosts and panelists. And with that, as we get started, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. If we could say our names, our role, and our organization that we're currently with. Additionally, we also encourage you to ask questions. So please use the Q&A feature for any you may have, and we'll get to as many as possible. We will be doing the Q&A at the end of the webinar in the last 10 to 15 minutes or so. And so use the Q&A feature throughout. And then you can also upvote any great questions to the top to make sure that I get to them. Later today or tomorrow, you will receive an email with a link to complete an evaluation of this webinar, as well as the presentation slides. Please take a few minutes to let us know your thoughts about today's presentation, and if you don't receive the evaluation email, check your junk email as it may have been directed there. Once you complete the evaluation, you will be redirected to your certificate of participation. Like all of IYI's webinars, today's webinar will be posted if you'd like to revisit a portion later or share the opportunity to listen in with partners. And with that, it is now my pleasure to turn it over to our speaker today, Dr. Larissa Litvinov from the Child Mind Institute.
Hello, everybody. I will share my screen so I can get that started. It's very exciting seeing how many different roles people are in. I did ask Joshua to share that because I think it's always interesting to know, and I really want to make sure I'm kind of talking to people and thinking about what they are doing with how they are working with youth. And so it really helps me kind of as I'm tailoring some of the conversations and thinking about how many questions you may have. Um, so I'm going to get started. But what I'll say is, again, if there's any really burning questions that you want to ask, put them in the chat and we can save them to the end. I Sometimes I find that if I get to the question too early, it's something that I'm going to get to later. I'm going to answer some of those questions. So, but if you want to put them in now, that's absolutely fine. And we will definitely make sure we have time. So my name is Laura Litvinov, or Dr. Larissa Litvinov. I go by either one. I am at Child Mind Institute. I'm a psychologist here, a director of our ADHD and Behavioral Disorders Center programming. And Child Mind, as some of you may know, is an amazing program that we're centered out of New York and California, but we have a huge global health. We have a podcast now. There's a lot on our website, a lot of amazing information. We have visiting professors and all sorts of things. So, and I am part of the clinical department. So we have, 3 centers. We have research where we're doing amazing amounts of research and they share the data and work with all people all over the world. And for clinical care, that's in our main offices. We also do some virtual care if we're licensed in those states. And there's a lot of public education. Again, there's quite a few articles and videos and great information on the website. I feel like every day I'm learning something new every time there's a something on there. So in terms of our today, kind of thinking about what our goals are, we really want to think about the challenging behaviors, right? That we're thinking about positive behavior strategies, and we really want to understand what are the underlying reasons, what are the functions, why, where there's a stage of development, what's the function of the behavior, what is the child trying to get to, and we'll talk about functions and trying to understand the whys of the behavior, and then think about how to apply kind of practical, really positive behavior strategies to help kind of promote the positive behaviors, we call it the positive opposite, and help them understand how to get their needs met in a different way that's more appropriate, more adaptive. And also thinking about in the big picture, I see that a lot of you're all in very many different roles, whether you're in schools or programs, organizations, you're going to have different roles. So how do we help kind of collaborate with one another and put in those relational supports and have those positive relationships with the children so that they can also be able to learn and grow because we really see the relationship as really being the agent of change. So we often look at this picture and we want you to just take a moment and look at the two pictures that you have side by side and think about what comes up for you. What do we notice? You can put in the chat or you can just think about it. But it's really helpful for us to think about kind of what's our initial reaction to what's going on. And I can keep this here for a moment and then really think about what do we see? And most people, what they point out to, what do they first notice? They notice the problematic behaviors in that second picture. They notice one exactly aggression, what might be triggers, thank you. Like the focus, right? If they're focused, then everything's fine. We don't have to worry about it. But if there's a free fall, people aren't paying attention. The second one, you have a child who's kind of spacing out, one that's hurt, right? The other room is chaos. And then so it's, and I love how you're all thinking about both the environment as well as kind of what is going on with each child. Because often we people look at these pictures, and again, I think your roles are really helpful thinking about what you do. It sounds like you already know that the child is a product of their environment, and they can be the problem behaviors may be escalated. There may be all sorts of things happening, why they're acting in a certain way, and how can the environment support them. So excellent, exactly. And what happens when we go out there and I talk to teachers, I talk to parents, educators all over the place, is that often when there are challenging behaviors like aggression or bullying or tantruming, those are the ones that don't necessarily get as much support or empathy as ones where there's sadness or anxiety. It can be a lot easier kind of seeing that and supporting that. And the other one we just want to kind of quell and we just want to kind of manage it and get it out of the way. And I think it's really helpful. And I can see a lot of you already are thinking in that way of just like what's going on, what's underneath that behavior, what might be a trigger that might kind of lead to some more challenging behaviors. So exactly. I think that really thinking now we want to think about identifying the functions of the behavior. And really we're talking about the whys, right? Thinking about the emotions, right? Let's think about the emotions that we have, that other children have. We react in an emotional way. As adults, as most of us are adults here, we've learned that there are appropriate and inappropriate ways of sharing our emotions, right? And how can we share in a way that's more adaptive, that people will hear more, as opposed to kind of being aggressive, either verbally or physically, or having a reaction that other people are not going to necessarily respond to. So, really thinking first about what's going on about the emotion. Because instead of just thinking, again, I think this group is already on this, instead of saying, oh, the child is doing it on purpose, oh, they're just being difficult, they should know better. That's a very common reaction. It's a very normal and typical reaction. Yet it's not going to get us to really helping with the behavior if we don't understand what the function is. So emotions communicate something, right? Whether it's a positive emotion or a negative emotion, we're communicating something to other people. And the question is, what are we trying to communicate and what are we trying to achieve in our behavior? So helping identify the emotion and the function really can make a really big difference in terms of actually intervening and helping kids. So again, even tough emotions are very big. It's what we do. So often when I talk to kids and I talk to parents, we always talk about, okay, it's okay. You can be angry. You can be angry. You can be annoyed. You can have these feelings and thoughts, and those are normal, and we want you to share. It's how you share. How do you keep your body safe? How are you still safe, both emotionally and physically with people? How do we react in a way how do we cope with the situation and be able to use our words? We often really want kids to be able to use their words. With little kids, we might use that. With older kids, it's really okay. How can you let them know and actually have the person be able to listen and have the people doing that? And what are other reactions, right? Sometimes kids can hurt themselves, they can hurt other people, they can miss school, they can miss family, not want to see family or friends. It can really affect a lot of areas, those challenging behaviors and those emotions. If we don't help them understand what their emotions are, understand other ways and help them cope with them, and help them learn these positive strategies, it does make it worse. So the first thing we really want to do, we talk about collecting data, right? We want to understand how to intervene. So here's where we're really talking about the function and the purpose of behaviors. So when parents come to me and like, oh my goodness, they're having meltdowns, they're having tantrums. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? What does that look like? So really we want them to be very specific. Oh, well, they're crying and throwing themselves on the floor. Oh, they're yelling at everyone. They're throwing things, they're being aggressive. What does it look like? Right? So really specific, we call it like observable and measurable. If some of you work in systems, you might know like SMART goals. If you have SMART goals, specific objectives, we really want to do that with kids there too, because one person's tantrum, one person's meltdown is not going to be the same thing. So, and we're not going to see it in the same way. So, what is it? When does it happen? Does it happen at school? So, you saw the two pictures of the school. Does it happen? Okay, are they having tantrums even in that more calm environment where the teacher seems to have things in pretty calm and focused and structured, or is it happening in a situation where everything is kind of chaos, right? So, is it happening at a certain time of the day at a certain place? Who's there? Who's the one that might be the catalyst for the emotions, right? Is another child saying something or another youth saying something to them and then that's where they react? Is it a particular teacher? Some teachers or some parents or some family members can be more protective or can just be a safer provide emotional safety so it doesn't happen so much with that person, but it happens a lot there. So we really want to understand where, with whom, when, and those are really our first steps. And that will help us get to why does it take place? What are the functions? So we call it the ABCs, meaning antecedent, like what happened right before the behavior began, then behavior, which is what are the actions? What are you observing, like we were talking about before? What are the specific, and then what are the consequences? So the consequences are very important. What happens immediately? Are we inadvertently reinforcing this behavior? And if so, then how can we change that, right? So whenever Johnny calls out in the classroom, um, the teacher pays attention to him, like, oh, Johnny, stop doing that. Don't do that. Or other kids will say something, he's getting negative attention, right? Even negative attention is better than no attention. So things like that. Or the consequences so big, oh, you get to send to the principal office and they get being sent all the time. Again, I apologize. I do talk to a lot of teachers, so those are my examples. But thinking about in families too. Are we not paying attention to the positive behavior? So looking at that calm group, we might be like, oh, good, good. That's what we expect to see. So when there's a problem is when we attend. So that can be a consequence of that behavior. Now the functions, there can be a lot of different functions, and we really work with people to really figure out, and it might serve multiple functions. Is it just attention, like we talked about? Is there an attention piece? Like they are really feeling like they want some attention, they want someone to notice them, they want other kids to laugh, they want, a caregiver or somebody to really attend to what's going on. They don't know how else to seek that attention, right? Is it tangible? Like they want what they want. Like I really want that iPad is a big one that I hear about, or the phone. I really want that screen, or I want that piece of candy, or I want that now. And so, like, are they just trying to get to something? Like, is that the function of the behavior? Or is it an escape? Is there something that's stressing them out? Are they trying to delay something? Is it a particular situation that's stressful, and so they'll act out because they know that gets them out of the behavior? Are they running out of a particular classroom, or they're avoiding doing their homework, or going to a therapist, or meeting with a particular family member? That's kind of escape. Are we really trying? Is that what it is? And sometimes it's and automatic and sensory. So meaning like it just feels good, right? So especially when we see with a lot of the kids that we work with have ADHD or autism, especially, but other kids too, something just feels good. Like like they're fidgety, they're restless. It just feels good. They're not doing it to get attention. They're not even realizing they're doing it. So it's very hard to stop, or even be aware that they're doing. So understanding those functions, and again, understanding those multiple functions can be the case, can really help us think, okay, so now what do we do? How do we get to those to help with the various behaviors? Okay, so now what's next? So let's think about now. We're thinking about the behaviors. We're thinking about what the function may be, the situation. So now what do we do? What are the strategies that we can use to really support? So this pyramid, I think, was created by somebody at CMI. I always want to credit her, but I don't know if that's actually true. I think it's somebody at CMI, an amazing psychologist named Caroline Mendel, really helped um, have a visual of what do we want to do more and what do we want to do less. So that really what we want to do is first we want to set the stage for success. With little kids, we talk about compliance friendly environment. Even with older kids, how do we make something compliance friendly? So with older kids, I often talk about screens. I talk about, okay, are you monitoring the screen? Are you turning it off? If the child has a hard time, we all get addicted to screens. So can you shut it off after a certain time? Can they not have access to this app so you're not getting into arguments all of the time, right? So how do you do that? So that's, and we'll talk about different ones. Setting the stage for success. We'll talk about, I'm getting ahead of myself, positive attending and active ignoring. So how do we really notice the positive behaviors? We really want to ignore the small stuff. And then how do we give effective directions? Right? This is, if you can see, those are the big parts of the pyramid. So really, we want to first do all of these things before we even go to behavior plans or reward systems. If you're in a school or at home or however it is, let's make sure that we're optimizing everything. And then the consequences should be the last thing. Often it's the first thing people do because it's like they have to do it. And with challenging behaviors, especially when they're risky behaviors, sometimes the consequences have to be immediate, right? But you want to do as much as possible of everything else so that kind of in the long term, we set the stage for success. Okay. So again, positive antecedents. Remember we said the ABCs, your positive antecedents makes a compliance friendly environment. Okay. So planning ahead. So setting really clear expectations for the kids, whether you're at home or at school or anywhere through the day. It's like, what is kids want predictability, especially kids from all over the place, but especially if kids have a lot of trauma and stressors in their lives, or they just have a hard time kind of keeping track of their routines, they have a hard time with transitions. really letting them know, having predictability. Here's what you're going to do today. Here is, and remember, like you're going to go to school today, you're going to have, these are the classes you're going to have. I'm going to pick you up at 3 o'clock. You're going to go to basketball practice, and then you're going to go home, do homework. Remember using kind words, safe body. So those are things that you're going to be going and talking about throughout the day. If it's big things like remember the test is coming up or a vacation's coming up, or you're going to be going and visiting another family member, really having as much predictability really helps. Transition support too. When we're talking in classrooms or at home, especially, giving them reminders. I like when I have kids in my room, I have an agenda that I set up even within the therapy room. Like, okay, this is what we're doing. We're doing a check-in, then we're going to do Laura's activity, working on coping skills or whatever it is, and then we get to do your activity, and then we get a prize. Like really all of that, and then letting them know, okay, so we have about 5 more minutes, and then it's going to end. So really having that for a lot of kids, especially under 10, a visual timer is really helpful. And then giving choices when possible, right? Instead of giving a command, like giving two choices you can live with. Those are really powerful. Or when then, right? We do a when then naturally, kind of we talk about like grandma's rule of when you finish your dinner, you can have dessert. When you finish your math, then you can play. And then modeling the skill. If we want them to stay calm, we have to model the calm. And then we'll talk a little bit more about scaffolding, how we can scaffold these behaviors and show what the right thing is to do until they learn to do it independently. It's really important. Your power of your attention is critical. Those positive relationships, as I think a lot of you know, are really the most important piece. Establishing that relationship, and it says students here, but for anybody, we talk about putting money in the bank. It increases their self-esteem. They feel good so that, and I do a therapy called parent-child interaction therapy here, where we only focus on the positives for the first 6 weeks, where I'm coaching parents. We're only doing that. So by the time we introduce timeout or other consequences, they're getting so much from those positive, noticing those positives, and the parents or the catching them being good, that they don't even need to go on timeout. Like it's almost like timeout doesn't need to happen. Consequences doesn't need to happen because instead of paying attention to all the negative behaviors, paying attention to the positive. And the other part of it is when we pay attention to the negative behavior gets reinforced. When we pay attention and we ignore the positive behavior, it doesn't get reinforced. So we want to do the opposite. Instead of paying attention to that negative and ignoring the positive, we want to flip it. So we really start noticing those positive behaviors and ignoring the negative behavior. So when we talk about ignoring negative, really what we're talking about is small, minor behaviors, not big behaviors, not aggression. So I talk to families and teachers about this a lot. Like, what is an annoying behavior? So I had a teacher that I talked to, like, oh, he raises his hand all the time when it's not his turn, and so we keep on telling him not to do that. Like, well, do you have to tell? You don't have to tell him more than once. You can just ignore him and pay attention to someone else. Yeah, but then he gets mad. Well, what does that look like? Well, he pouts or he complains. So can we ignore that? If it's not too disruptive, can you ignore that and notice every time he waits, he doesn't say anything. Thank you for waiting. You've already talked. We'll get to you later, but I appreciate you waiting. So noticing the positive. Oh, you really waited to raise your hand. Trying to do that. Those whining, demanding, some of those voice, the kind of the tone of voice. If you can ignore that and pay attention when they have the positive opposite, that's really the key. So again, some examples of, thank you for following directions right away. Great for kids who don't contribute too much to a class discussion. Maybe, great that you're contributing. You can have token economies, points, checks. That's really what we're going to talk about in behavior charts. But even just that verbal praise, and some of this sounds like what you would do with a younger child. And people are like, well, yeah, my 10-year-old, my 12-year-old, the 14-year-old I work with does not respond in that way. So then you have to make it a little bit more subtle. So you might be like, hey, great job. You waited there. Excellent. So you might have to really check your tone, see what works, be authentic, but help them notice all the positive behaviors because that is really the key. And, this is just another page that talks about kind of different ones. You say, that's hard. Thanks for not giving up. So, really, persistence and not just praising the outcome, but praising they were working on it. Like, so often, like a child gets upset and they're about to yell or they're about to hit somebody, noticing that, "Ugh, I saw you got really frustrated. You kept it to you got yourself together. You kept it to yourself. You took that breath. I saw that. That's exactly what you want to do." So really noticing that and praising the effort, not just the product, because that's what we call shaping behaviors. These are more some verbalizations. I know you're going to get the PowerPoint from this, but just what we want to avoid asking more questions and really letting what we talk about, like letting the child lead. Like often we talk about like, oh, this is what we want. Oh, you need to do this, you need to do this, and that's good information. But you really want to, as much as possible, really kind of just pay attention to what they're doing, what they're saying, give them the opportunity. And when you're asking questions, those rapid fire questions can be overwhelming if you start seeing them get overwhelmed or giving a lot of commands or directions without feedback, like, oh, get this, get this, get this, get this, and they're getting it, but you're not kind of noticing it, like, oh, they got this done. Oh, thanks for doing that. I appreciate that. I know I'm giving you a lot of directions. Thanks for getting that done. One more thing. So really kind of having some cushion. We kind of talk about like filling the bucket or having a cushion. When I'm training, doing again the parent-child interaction therapy, we talk about like 10 positive things, saying 10 positive things before your next command, and then follow up with some 10 positives. So really that sandwich effect of really helping them notice. And it also helps them notice their behavior and notice when they're doing it right, because normally they're hearing a lot of what they're doing wrong. And then the withdrawing attention, we call it selective attention, differential reinforcement. So what you can ignore, try to ignore. I have a little chart that goes like, so again, this is maybe in class, but student calls out in class, the teacher reprimands or accepts the answer, and then it gets reinforced, right? So instead, the student calls out, you ignore that student and praise another student for raising their hand and answer that question. And that should reduce the calling out behavior. It's not easy, it takes some time. But if they say, oh, if I just raised my hand and I was quiet, the teacher would call on me. And then when you do thanks for waiting, great job doing that, then it's going to really help. So it's differential attention. It can be selective attention. Sometimes kids get very upset, especially if there's like multiple siblings and you're always paying attention to that one sibling. So you do have to be nuanced in that. And you might have to have that conversation, say like, I know you're trying and we're keep on working on it. So you still have to do the right thing. And I saw you did it yesterday. You can do it again. So really noticing that and recognize that there's going to be an extinction burst, meaning sometimes if they're used to getting a lot of attention for that behavior, once you withdraw that attention, that behavior is going to get worse before it gets better. So let's talk about instructions, right? We're going up the pyramid. We've done the setting up stage for the success, positive attending. How do we give directions? The big piece here is telling them what to do instead of what not to do. Be very clear, and especially for littler kids or kids who have a hard time with attention, give one direction at a time and follow up. So timing is going to be, and then follow it up with a praise or some positive feedback. Trying to avoid the no, don't, stop. I often talk to families and I say the word for kids who are ready to oppose, be a little bit more oppositional or do the opposite of what you say. You say, don't jump on the couch. And that all they hear is, oh, did you say jump on the couch? And this is a red flag to a bull. Like the word don't really kind of gets them. So tell them what they want them to do and make sure it's appropriate. Make sure that they can do it. And that's where we talk a little bit more about scaffolding. Um, and we also, timing is everything, especially for our negotiating kids, which is a lot of our kids. So why do I have to do that? Why do I have to, so put in your shoes, get your shoes on. Let's go. Like, why am I putting my shoes on? I thought we were doing this and I was playing with the toys, da, 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 da. So it's like you can give the information, okay, time to put your toys away because we're going to the store right now. Please put your shoes on. Okay, so either give the information before the direction or afterwards. After they do it and you praise it, and then so you're not going into the dawdling, so you're not getting into that discussion. You're just, you can get giving them information before is great, not too much, but less talking. Once you've given that direction, just wait. And then again, behavior charts. I don't know how many people are using behavior charts either at school or working with parents on behavior charts, but you really want to make sure that they're very defined behavior charts. Really focus on behave, not too many behaviors, find the calm time, and then think about what rewards you want to give. And if the behavior is difficult, you might want to scaffold it. You really want them to have success in the behavior chart so it's more effective. And you're going to adapt it as you go. Once they've been able to do a behavior and do it correctly, then up the ante. But first start with more success so they're more invested. And think about what privileges, what are the rewards that work. Sometimes small rewards can be helpful. Don't take away points if you're having a point chart, don't take them away. You're going to have consequences for that. That's separate, but trying to have kind of more frequent, especially for littler kids, you really want to have frequent rewards. And the reward can be a sticker. It can be like you can have 5 stickers and then you get to choose what we do next or help the classroom pass out, be a classroom leader or pass out papers or something like that. But really making sure you're working and you're thinking about what's going to work for this child. Again, these are like, common rewards for younger children, older children. I can't tell you how many times I talk to families about using rewards that are experiences or special time. Like it might be like, oh, or choices. Like if there's multiple siblings, like, if you can get this done, you get to choose where we order food from, or you get to choose what we watch on TV or something like that. Or we get to go for ice cream. You get to, pick where we go for ice cream. Something like that can be very helpful. It doesn't have to be tangible. It doesn't have to be monetary. So just and being careful with screen time because sometimes parents feel like all they're doing is getting more and more screen time. So really thinking about how you use that. So trying to find other rewards is going to be helpful. And then really in terms of guidelines for consequences, you really want to think about use very, very sparingly. That should be the last thing you do. Everything else should be in there before you have consequence and do it in small doses. Sometimes parents are like, that's it, you've lost screen time for a week. And it's like, well, once you've done it, follow through. But do we have to lose it for a week? It's going to be punishment for you sometimes as well as for them. Can you just do it for a day? Can you do it for a night? And then have a reset and being consistent and following through and doing it in a calm voice. Sometimes people get so, frustrated and tired, their tone changes, and trying to have that calm voice can be very, very difficult. And trying to really, like I said, for harsh punishments, they're really just ineffective and kind of it increases the reactivity of the child. They feel like, oh, I'm never going to do it right. And it also doesn't, again, teach the appropriate behavior as much as what not to do. So, again, really figuring out other ways before you even get to the consequence part. And start trying to do some natural consequences if possible. I'm recognizing that I'm going through quickly because I want to make sure we have enough time for questions because I can see there's questions coming in. I want to just talk a little bit about kind of building resilience and really kind of encouraging persistence. Like that was what we were talking about in terms of praising effort, helping them going, helping them keep going. So thinking about the timing, we kind of going back to the emotions, right? We find that kind of catching that wave of emotions is really the key. Because once, as I think most of you know, once they're in this peak emotional state, they're not going to be able to respond. They're not going to be able to hear you, hear what you're trying tell them, oh, or use a coping technique, that might not be the time. So it's catching the wave, trying to notice it. Okay, okay, you look like you're getting frustrated. Let's take a quick breath. Let's redirect. I hear your tone going up. That's the time to go in. When you're in peak emotion, you're just kind of you're there just to maintain safety. They're not able to learn. They're not able to hear you, and this could be, aggression or emotional safety, physical safety. Okay, I am here. I'm here for you. I can listen once you're calm, but I am here. And then how do we kind of come back down, maintaining that support? And then when they come back down, then you can have that discussion. Once they've de-escalated, you can have that discussion. Okay, so what happened? Tell me what happened. Okay, and then you can review. Okay, next time you can do this. Next time you can ask me for help before getting frustrated. Next time, what can I do? So you're really collaborating on a problem. You just can't do that when they're in peak emotion. That's not the time. And I often talk to, families or teachers like, oh, they don't hear me, and so this doesn't work. It's like, well, it doesn't work there. It's figuring out how to catch the wave and just recognizing those pieces. Um, and then how do we do the active listening? Really, really listening to them. Again, before or after the peak emotion, really listen to them. I think sometimes we tend to do a lot more lecturing. A lot of us do a lot more lecturing, like this is what you need to do. This is what I, this is what it seems to be. If you actually listen and ask them some questions and wait for them to tell you, they often can tell you something that is surprising. Like like you thought they were upset about one thing, but they actually were upset about another thing. I've had family that I worked with before where they had to do it was a contentious divorce and they had to do the exchange at a police station. And so there was just so many high intensity feelings. And so there was like a pulling back and forth. And so when I was talking to the child, the younger child, and the the parent who has most of the custody, um, that parent said, "Oh, it was so hard because the pulling back and forth, and that was just very hard for my child." And I asked the child, I said, like, is that what was really hard? And he said, well, I just don't know why this parent let me go. So the pulling back and forth was not as hard for him as that parent letting him go so that he wouldn't be pulled back and forth. So it's really hearing what it is. What's the reason? What was he upset about? Is that what the issue is? So because we have our own interpretations, our own guesses, and they're great hypotheses. And sometimes kids can't explain it, but when we can, it's really helpful. And then reflecting that back to them, validating their experiences, their feelings, so maybe the action is not correct, but it's not appropriate, it's aggressive, we don't want them to do it, but validating the feeling and the thought, oh, I get why you're very upset. Your sibling, does really well in school, and so you feel like they get a lot of attention, they get a lot of praise, and you're really struggling and you feel like it's unfair. I hear you. So being able to hear that, I get that. And we still have to be kind to our sibling. We still have to be nice to other people and just come and talk to me and we'll discuss it and I'll see what I can do to make anything better. But just being able to hear it can really make a huge difference and really validating. I think with if anybody knows any kind of dialectical behavioral therapy, I love the phrasing of validation and change. So acceptance and change. So validating, this is an appropriate thought, behavior, all that thought and feeling, and I can see why it went to this behavior, and we still have to do something different. And encourage persistence. If they've been doing it for a while, if they've been doing the wrong thing for a while, how do we get them to do the right thing? And model, and we can model that. Like, you know what? I get frustrated too. Oh, God, I was so angry and I yelled. God, I really shouldn't have yelled. So next time I'm really gonna think about it. I'm gonna take a breath and I'm gonna do it. It models you trying to do something different for yourself, that everyone makes mistakes. So kids are like, oh, I'm always getting in trouble. Well, are you always getting in trouble? Like we all make mistakes and we all try to do better. And I see how hard you're working. And that's where we're really praising that process and highlighting the growth. Okay, it's not perfect, but look at this, look at what you did, and helping them know, oh, I was able to handle it. Oh, I was able to do that. And then getting out of the way, especially when it's between peers or siblings, get out of the way, let them deal with it. If it's okay for as long as possible, let them problem solve and without having to be the referee in there. And then helping them really think about, okay, so what would you tell a friend to do in this situation, or what do you think is the right thing to do? And often in therapy, as I can see there are a lot of therapists on here too, of like, how would somebody on the outside do it? And so kind of having a little distance with little kids, sometimes we have puppets, we have dolls, and that can be a really good way of getting in there. Um, so we talk about the 5 Ps of persistent coaching, like really praising, like, look, you did it. You did it this one time. I know you can do it again, right? And then prompting, like breaking things down in small steps, and even praising the small steps. So I have another thing that comes up a lot, and again, I do work with all sorts of ages, but sometimes it's easier to kind of give examples of younger kids where I'm doing the PCIT and the child, the parent says, okay, it's time to clean up. And the child is throwing the toys in there and going, I don't want to clean up. And I'm like, we are going to ignore the language and be like, oh, you're cleaning up. Thanks for listening to me. And they turn like, but didn't you hear me? And we're ignoring the I don't want to clean up, but they're cleaning up. And that happens a lot. So the more you pay attention to that, the less they're going to be saying it because it's not going to work. It's not going to get your attention. But what's going to get work is doing what you're asking them to do. And predict that it can be, you can do it. You're working on it. Really, I bet you can do it this time. I bet you can make that goal, whether it's soccer. I bet you're going to have an easier day, a little bit, take a couple of bites of this new food and recognizing that it's patience for them, patience for you, and it's more practice. It's a process, which people get really frustrated by, both kids and parents, like, this isn't working. It's a process. It's work. It'll get there. It's not always linear and it might be slower than you'd like, but it is with practice, practicing coping skills, practicing any of these, whether it's charts or any of those pieces, the validation, the positives, it takes some work. And it takes work for everybody, kind of noticing what you're doing differently and noticing how you can use your language differently or how you can support your community to be different. And this was the scaffolding that we were talking about in building resilience. So again, this is for a classroom situation, but it doesn't have to be. It can be with a parent, it can be with a CASA, anybody, a social worker. You're doing it with you. You're doing it first, you're doing it with them and then, or for them. And you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to take some deep breaths. Okay, let's take some deep breaths together. I'm going to think about, I'm going to use whatever the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to notice 5 things that are green and 4 things that are this. So you're doing it with them and then they're watching you or they're doing it together. And then you're reminding them, like, why don't we try this breathing thing? This might be a good time to use, to draw if that helps you. So that's a prompt. And at some point they do it on their own. I've seen kids, even young kids that I I see them breathing and using the breathing. I'm like, wait, where did they learn that? Oh, well, they learned it from before and they're using it appropriately and that's helping them regulate. So really those pieces of kind of shaping and scaffolding, excuse me. As you can see, I put a timer on because I can go on a long time, which is perfect because guess where we're at? We're at questions and discussion. So thank you, Josh.
Oh, you timed that perfectly.
Amazing.
Um,
Amazing.
yeah,
Yes.
great job. So we have about 10, a little over 10 minutes for questions, and then we'll go ahead and close out. We do have some questions in the Q&A kind of box down below, but please continue to put questions that you have in there. And so I am just going to start going through these. One, if one child in your classroom is misbehaving, should you address the behavior in front of the entire class or away from the class? I'm wondering if the behavior is affecting the rest of the class in a negative way.
That's a really good question. In fact, I have a slide that I took out at the last minute, which are kind of from least invasive to most invasive interventions. And again, depending on the age of the child, the classroom, but trying to kind of remember everybody, kind of doing a more group intervention first. So, oh, okay, everybody raise your hands before talking, or or please, stay quiet while somebody else is talking, whatever that behavior is. So having a group one, and then maybe noticing another child saying, "Oh, little Susie, she's able to raise her hand. Thank you. I can call on you now." And then seeing if you can do a nonverbal, if you can get that child's attention. That's kind of the middle one, trying to do it so that you don't have to remove that child from the classroom, so there isn't so much attention on that child. So trying those other things first before you go to like a little behavior chart or specific with the child, or even taking them out of the classroom. That would be my answer to that question. Sometimes you have to, but if you can do something else, and that's where the differential attention can really help.
Gotcha. The next one is, and I actually feel this one deep in my core. What about kids who feel strange about being praised?
Oh God, yes. I feel at my core as well. That's why I was saying you really have to be thoughtful of that. What we do in PCIT, is like lowering your tone. So like not making a big deal. And so just noticing something and not saying, great job doing this. Say, hey, you got this done. Or maybe even a tap on the shoulder if that's appropriate, or just like kind of a elbow, kind of what you would do with a teen, if you think of it that way. Even with a younger kid, some kids don't. Oh, you do. And even noticing what they're doing. You can notice what they're doing instead of praising what they're doing. So like, oh, I see you're writing that essay right now. Oh, that looks really interesting. Oh, cool. So doing something and really noticing kind of the change in your voice and how they respond. And slowly kids will get there. But that's what we recommend.
Gotcha.
I don't know if that
Next
if
one.
Josh, if that works, if that's something you've seen before too, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. More of like I have a hard time accepting praise and compliments.
Oh, for sure.
Um, quick one, and then I will also put this in the chat. But what is the name of your podcast?
My our the podcast on CMI, it's called the Thriving Kids Podcast. It's an excellent podcast. I'm happy to, I think when we send information, we can send an actual link. I can ask our team to send an actual link. It's a great, oh, look at that. Already done. Yes, Dave Anderson, who has been a child mind for a while, has interviews people inside and outside of CMI, and it's a really great thing.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions for supporting a kid who has become dysregulated when you are with them for a one-off experience and thus don't have a relationship established?
Okay. Um, so you're saying it kind of it's not a regular relationship. It's kind of just a one time kind of you're working with them how to kind of help them regulate. I guess I would say it kind of depends on the specific age of the child and what does dysregulated look like. So kind of when we think about specific behaviors, I think that's where you really want to kind of start with a compliance friendly environment, start with this friendly environment. If the child gets dysregulated, figuring are they getting dysregulated because they always get dysregulated, they're coming to this office is associated with something different. Or I mean, I had a child recently that got mad because I talked to their principal because I wanted to get ideas and creative behavior. So I was like, oh no, I'm in trouble. It's like, no, you're not in trouble. Actually, your principal loves you a lot. So kind of getting in there at first and saying, I know, kind of validating how it might be uncomfortable, kind of addressing it and being authentic and as transparent as possible, and letting them know it's okay. We'll take time. We need to do this, but I'm going to try to make this as comfortable as possible. Giving them something to do. So if the kids can be helped, you're welcome to play with some toys or draw or whatever little fidget things, and kind of really slow, lowering your tone and slowing down can really help them. It's kind of that co-regulation piece that works.
Yep. Gotcha. Okay, next question. I work in libraries where we often see the same kids, but we generally get a revolving door of kids in our programs. Unlike a school or after school care, we have less opportunity to use and build on positive behavior techniques. Can you speak? Oh, I guess this is pretty similar. Can you speak on how these techniques might be adapted for shorter term situations?
Yeah.
So
Well, I think
maybe not one off, but maybe just shorter term generally.
right. Well, and it sounds like situations where kind of creating that, again, that compliance friendly environment, kind of creating a welcoming environment. Um, if you have time, depending on, how much you're interacting with them, but kind of letting them know, I'm here for questions. Oh, I really like the book you're reading, like noticing something positive about them. Oh, thank you so much for staying quiet. Some kids don't stay quiet in the library, and so great. You're setting such a nice example, but not doing it in such a way that other kids feel alienated. So that's kind of the balance. But just, oh, I really appreciate you staying quiet. Sometimes it's almost catching a behavior. This might be tricky, but catching a behavior before it happens. Sometimes when kids are trying to run out the door before it's time, I'll stand in front of the door and they can't go to the door. And so I say, thank you so much for waiting and staying in the room. And they're like, well, I couldn't actually get out. I'm like, yeah, but I appreciate you waiting. So it's kind of like surprises them. You're kind of like, you catch them by surprise. So catching them being good, even in little moments, makes a big difference. It doesn't have to be a long-term relationship. They really do remember that.
Yep. Great. We had another one just come in. Can you speak on working with a student on behavior when you are not present when you're not present when the behavior is occurring? I.e., it's occurring in class, and this person might meet with the student one-on-one as their social worker or in another
Got it.
setting.
Got it. Got it. So how to help. So I'm guessing that you're probably kind of trying to help them with the behavior that's happening in a classroom. And they're coming to you, and you might not have, they might be kind of saying, oh, well, that's not how it happened. Da, 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 da. And they might kind of being saying, oh, the person didn't get it wrong, and you haven't seen it yourself. And so kind of thinking about that's how I'm understanding the question. I could be wrong. Let me know. Um, I would say, well, tell me from your perspective, kind of what happened. And okay, so that's what happened. And so, he hit me first, and then I hit whatever it is. It's, oh, okay, okay. So I'm hearing that. So what do you think the teacher might be saying, or what do you think might be the problem? Sometimes I preempt it if I have an idea. I had this with a child recently, with a 6-year-old who acted out at school, and the school was very upset, and she acted out on another child, and I said, oh, I wonder if you were really angry at the child. Because at first she's like, well, yeah, then I lied. Well, I didn't lie. I just didn't understand. So I'm like, oh, okay. Well, sometimes when we get really angry, sometimes we do things we don't want to be doing. And so let's see how we can help with the anger. It's understandable to be angry, and we still have to be kind to our friends, and we still have to tell the truth about them. So it's, again, that's where the kind of, I really push into the validation and helping them so that they don't have to make excuses about it. You could just say, yeah, I get it. It's hard. And this is what we need to do. And what do you think? What do you think would help in this situation? Then it's like you become a little bit more, you can collaborate with them and think about what they can do next time. And sometimes that helps kind of them take some accountability and go there.
Great, great. Next question, and just as a reminder, we do have time for a few more questions if people want to submit. Do you have any suggestion for when a child's behavior might be triggering to you? What are some good, maybe in the moment coping mechanisms for this?
Yeah. So I think that kind of the same thing that we tell kids and parents is just taking a mindful moment, because it can be triggering. They can say a particular thing, and sometimes kids really know exactly what to say that's going to affect you and said take you aback. And sometimes I'll even like put my hand on my heart and be like, "Wow, sounds like you were very angry." Okay, wow, that kind of hurt my feelings, and like maybe even being authentic, like, wow, that really hurt. I can imagine how hurt you're feeling. I might need to take a moment before answering the question or something like that. So, like taking that moment, being authentic without putting it on them, right? They're not responsible for your feelings. I'm not asking them to apologize. I'm just saying, whoa, okay. If it's an aggressive piece, if it's like sometimes we get thrown things that gets, okay, so we need to be safe in the room. Please stay safe in the room. I'm going to stay over here because I want to make sure I don't get hurt. Um, but I guess I would say really noticing it and not ignoring it in your body. So being mindful. And if you know it's that kind of child who's going to come in and that's going to happen, if it's a pattern of behavior, really preparing yourself. I had a child who I was seeing, a youth, a teenager I was seeing that would curse at me. We'd be on the virtual call and he'd be cursing at me, or he'd change his name to some things I'm not going to say. Um, and we don't have any time for effing chit chat or whatever it is. And I'm like, wow, okay. So I really, remember what the rules are here. You really need to be using appropriate language. I don't care if you curse about this or that, but cursing at me is a whole different thing. But I used to have to prepare for myself every time going in. And at some point, if it keeps on happening, it's like maybe that's not the modality that works for them. Let's think about what else is going to work better.
Yep. Yep. And so this will be the last question. There's a comment in the question and answer session about a student or a youth or someone that seems to be argumentative, defiant, kind of in classroom, at home, in all settings. And so I guess my question would be, if I am somebody that's going to be new to working with a youth or a student that might have a hard time in all situations, what are some good places to start with that kid?
In terms of would you,
In terms of building a relationship of trust with that person, or
got
like
it. I was gonna say,
getting
the first question
strategies.
I'd be like, do they have a mental health provider, and being able to coordinate with that mental health provider as much as possible so that you can kind of come together, the mental health provider, the parent. Um, I'd say two things. One is getting the information from whatever that last year experience, and helping that inform. Sometimes I have parents that have conversations with teachers and principals even before the school year starts, and we kind of start off on the right footing. And that can help a lot, just kind of having a plan ahead of time. And then trying to also start afresh, like having this year be a new day and letting the child know that you're happy that they're there. So, because they're going to be nervous. It's like, oh, great, what has this person heard about me? All that kind of thing. So, it's kind of starting a new day and planning for it at the same time.
Yep, yep, that makes sense. And that is perfect time now for us to
Great.
kind of start to wrap up. And so I just want to first thank you, Dr. Litvinoff, for the wonderful presentation. There were a ton of strategies and context that are super important for the people here. So thank you. As we move forward here, you can see on the screen that we have our National Summit on Youth Wellbeing coming up on May 5th. I'm really excited because Dr. Litvinov will be doing a presentation for that summit, which we're super excited about, as well as many other great and insightful sessions. Additionally, oh yes,
Gosh, I realized I forgot to share information about how to contact CMI. Can we
is it
send that?
in the is it I can send
It's
it in the
in the
follow-up
slide.
email.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry. I
yep.
just realized it.
So
I always
the information to follow up with Child Mind Institute will be in the slide deck that we send out after. So you'll receive that either this afternoon or tomorrow. Great. And so in addition to the national summit that we have coming up, next month we also have our regular webinar on April 15th, and that one is partnering with families to address the youth mental health crisis. And so, without any further ado, I'd just like to thank you, youth workers in Indiana, for all of the work that you do and for giving us your time today to learn a little bit more. So, thank you, and I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
thank you, everybody.